each place where I felt a gravitational pull towards, and I would offer my assistance, and everybody would marvel and they'd say to my aunt, "Oh, you've taught him so good. He
Oh
knows
my
everything so
God.
well. He even knows better than you." And she kept on being like, "But this is strange. Where is all of this coming from?"
Before we dive in, may I kindly ask you to subscribe to the podcast? Your support helps me to bring in inspiring guests and share these episodes with you completely free.
Is there an animal that you particularly resonate with and you can't understand why you're drawn to this animal? The animal appears in unexpected places. The name is mentioned a whole load of times in your life. Do you think it's possible that this is a sign that this animal is your spirit animal and it's speaking to you, it's guiding you, it's reaching out to you to help reach self-realization? In many African traditions, animal totems don't just act as personal guides, but they're also ancestral messengers, and they link us to the wisdom of our forebears. Now, in the earlier days, even before humans could write, we used to draw. And in the caves, we did animal scenes and hunting scenes, not just as a depiction of what we've done, but almost as a spiritual offering, almost way of expressing our respect to the animal kingdom. And this was a way of ensuring safe hunts, abundant blessing. In many, many parts of the world, animals are considered to be guides, they're considered to be messengers, and they come with certain energies that are attached to them. So in the Native American traditions, you see bears, wolves, and eagles, and they're supposed to be signs of wisdom, of courage, of protection. In a lot of shamanic traditions, it's believed that animal spirits come to help us heal, they come to teach us, they come to navigate us through our lives and into the spiritual realm. And even in Chinese astrology, you'll find that you have the likes of dragons and horses and roosters and animals, which also show you what your life path is going to be, and they give you deep insights into your character. Many cultures believe that a person is born with an animal spirit, and that this animal spirit stays with you throughout your life, navigating and helping you. These animals are not just symbolic, they represent deep personal truths, calling us to embody their qualities, whether strength, wisdom, transformation, protection. And in many African traditions, animal totems are also thought to be deeply, deeply connected to the wisdom of our ancestors. They act as personal guides and ancestral protectors. I've been lucky enough to talk about this topic with spiritual masters in the Far East, in the Himalayas. I've talked to shamans about it in Central America and South America, and to elders all over the world. In today's episode, we're going to talk about totem animals and ancestral guides and how these shape the path of our lives in the physical world and in the spiritual world. To answer our questions today, we have Tiisetso Makhubedu. He is a South African Sangoma. He knew when he was very young that this is what he wanted to do. At the age of 28, he decided to become a Sangoma, and he's particularly passionate about helping the youth connect to African traditions. A Sangoma is a South African traditional healer, and he's been working to help the youth understand their traditions and to make sure that this very valuable art and science is not lost. Welcome to the chat, Tiisetso. It's such a pleasure to meet you again.
Hi, Anshu. It's an absolute pleasure to be with you here.
Thank you. Now, tell me, what was it that made you feel, okay, I need to explore this more. I need to take this as my life's journey.
So, as I'm sharing, this is 2009 where I went to varsity. And these experiences and range just of completely coming out of myself happened for between 2009 and 2013, where by the time it got to 2013, I was very certain that coming from a family that is pathologically diagnosed on my maternal side as carrying bipolar, I was like, oh, perhaps I have a mental health condition and I may also suffer from bipolar. And I was even scared because I thought I mean, maybe something worse. It could be schizophrenia because I would speak to myself, but speak to myself in a way that connected to the outside world. And I would hear it's not many voices or it's not another voice, but there was a distinct voice which emerged, which was my own voice in terms of how it sounded, but I could recognize energetically it wasn't my voice. And so it would be able to give me messages, and sometimes I would be in conversation with you, and before you asked a question, I would give the answer. So how I processed all of that was that, okay, you are losing it. Literally, how I, at that time, with the language I had, the exact words I used was, you are batshit crazy and something is wrong. And the more I surrendered to that, the more then the voice started to clarify and almost as though counter that the cementation of that idea of having a mental health challenge. I mentioned earlier that grade 11 in 2007 was the year where I moved to Buddhism. But that was also the year where I bought a very special magical book, which would then really cement everything that was happening inside. So I had bought that book in grade 11 because there was a prose within it of African myths and prose that I wanted to perform that year at the Stedford, as I love Stedford. In 2013, then I went and I found this book after all of these experiences, and in it, Babcredo Mutwa narrates the dark night of the soul and the signs and symptoms of having a calling. And
I see. And that's what clicked for you, was it?
This time reading the book in this space where I was already now open and thirsting so much for indigeneity, I was like, oh my word, this is what's going on. This was around January. I read the book almost over and over for the January, February, March of 2013. And in March would be a pivotal time as my mom would come to visit in Pretoria, where I was there staying. And the first time that she had actually come to visit in Pretoria, in that March when my mom came to Pretoria, then had a conversation with me around what's going on. And all I could respond to her was that I just feel it within myself. And I also know that the surname we use is not actually our original surname, as our surname is this, which I shared, and and our great grandfather comes from Malawi. She was so shocked because she had only heard that as rumors, right?
Oh,
and she was like,
wow.
who did you find that out from? And I was like, this is what I mean. There's these things which just come up within me that is remembrance. She was connected to a relative of mine from my paternal side. So she suggested that we go and see her, and then they can be able to ascertain whether or not I have a calling. Aunt Adelaide, who we went to see, then we meet up with her. She's in Johannesburg. She's working at Wits. And yet we are going to travel back to where she initiated in Mpumalanga, where she now has initiates. On the trip there, we go past this man who is a prophet. So he practices spiritually, but he practices through African Zionist means. Already when we got there, I was like, I don't like this man because I had completely had shifted from having such a fond relationship with organized religion and Christianity to then in my awakening feeling a super, 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 super strong feelings of this is the cause of what has erased our ways of being. Anyway, we go in and he then starts to channel his message. My mom asks him, he says he has a calling. Does he have a calling? Which made me very uncomfortable because I was like, but you've told him now. I can't trust it. It's supposed to be, he's supposed to channel. To which he then responds, "No, I don't have an ancestral calling. What's plaguing me is that there's trauma around the passing of my father that has been transferred to me and needs to then have certain rites of passage which are done to be able to heal that because I wasn't able to go to my father's funeral." When he said that, I literally looked at my mom, I looked at him, looked at my aunt, and I got up and I walked out of that room. My mom was like shouting off at me saying, "Come back, we're here to get answers." And I was like, these are not, just doesn't resonate with me. From there, we left and we went back to Mpumalanga with my aunt to go to where now her teacher was and where her first round of twasas, her initiates were. When we got there, I immediately just knew my way around the homestead. I walked into the homestead and they were beading. And I instinctively was like, "Can I help you bead?" And they were like, "Yes, do you know how to?" And my response was yes. And to my surprise,
wow.
I knew how to bead. So for 2 weeks while we were preparing for this initiation ceremony of these two initiates that were going through their process, I was assisting my aunt with a community of about 15 healers who would come in and out of the homestead, as it's quite big work. Each place where I felt a gravitational pull towards, and I would offer my assistance, and everybody would marvel and they'd say to my aunt, "Oh, you've taught him so good. He
Oh
knows
my
everything so
God.
well. He even knows better than you." And she kept on being like, "But this is strange. Where is all of this coming from?" I within myself felt at home. That weekend finally came of the initiation there. And at the initiation, the person who would become my Gobela, my guru, my teacher,
So the word is
she
Kobela, is it?
Gobela.
Kobela. Okay.
Gobela.
Kobela. Okay.
She was by the fire, I remember, and she came to me and she asked me if I have snuff. Snuff is a traditional offering which is similar to hape that they use in South America. It's that you inhale. We use
Okay.
it to connect our ancestors. So she
Okay.
asked me whether I had snuff, and I said yes. And she was like, "But she's looking for a particular one, the green snuff, which is a mentally flavored one." And I was like, "You're in luck. I have just that one." So I offered it to her. She took it. She took the snuff. When she was done, she remarked and she was like, "This is so strange. I usually don't ask people for things, and particularly snuff, because it's a connector. So it carries such a
Ah.
residue of someone's energy. And for me to take in your energy into my body in that way, that's something." I was like, "Sure." And I also generally don't like talking to people I don't know. So it's strange. We sat at the fire and had a whole conversation, I think, for about 30 minutes before the night vigil began. And by the time the weekend finished, her and I have formed a connection and a bond. And they invited us then. They were having an initiation ceremony 2 weeks later. I was so excited to be in this space. And when we finally went to the homestead which is my spiritual home, my ancestral wisdom lineage's home. We got there in the evening. It was myself. I have a half sibling from my father, my half sister, and my mother. We went there. When we arrived, we were greeted and introduced to the grand matriarch of the homestead, who is the mother of my Gobela and her Gobela as well. And the first thing she said when she saw me was to my Gobela, "Oh, I'm so happy you have brought me back my husband."
Oh my God.
And I looked at this old woman and I was like, "This feels so good. Yeah, I'm your husband." And we immediately hugged and we embraced. She asked me whether I'd ever spilled any human blood. in terms like through violent acts? And I was like, no, I haven't. And she was like, great, you can go to the back and go and help them with the sacred sacraments, the offerings, the goats. They were preparing to offer the goats as part of the sacrament. And when I come back to the spot where we met, my sister asks me, where was I? And I was like to her, it doesn't matter where I was. I looked at her, I looked at then my kobela, and I said to my sister, you know, I am going to initiate, I'm going to Twasa, and this is the place where I'm going to Twasa. And that girl over there is the person who's going to be my teacher.
Oh, wow.
This was in April, around the end of April. 3 months later, in July, on the 7th, I would be in Game, Mshatsa Pola, at my Kobela's homestead, beginning my journey of initiating for a year and 3 months.
Wow. And is that how long it normally takes, a year and 3 months to initiate?
Currently, if I'm honest, a lot of people, if you're working, you have a family and all of that, no job is going to let you go for a year and 3 months. So within a South African context, depending on the severity of your dark night of the soul, perhaps if it's just if it's causing mental health, fitness issues and everything, if your psychiatrist can then say that, okay, we have tried everything and we are seeing that this is what it is, and they will then give you the maximum amount of time that you can take off of work to go then and perform your rites of passage.
Amazing. What a fabulous story, Tiisetso. Now I want to ask you about this topic today. Will you explain to us, what does the word totem mean? And what does an animal spirit guide mean? And what is the difference between the two?
This is how I'll come into the conversation. By paternal lineage, I am Mupulana. That is our nation, our culture. It's Mupulana, which means
Mupulana.
those.
Okay.
Yes. We come from an area which is in Mpumalanga. In our Mapulana cosmology, each and every one of our lineages, and lineages being on last name. My surname is Makhubedu. Our totem is, oh, I have a tattoo here. I'm trying to see if everybody can see it.
What
And
does it say?
it says Sibuku, which is a worm. And
Oh,
that is our
wow.
totem.
Okay.
So in Pulana cosmology, every lineage has their last name, and every last name has then a totem within which we are connected to. A totem is like signifies a banner.
Banner. Okay.
And within that banner, whatever in that banner is represented there connects to a history or a creation story of that particular nation, right? And that's also what for within us as Mapulana that represents. I will share a bit around my own surname as Makhubedu.
Just one thing to clarify. So you're saying that the totem is a banner. Is it the same as the animal spirit guide, or is that different?
So each of us in our surnames or our last names as Mapulana people each have a totem, a banner that represents House Makhubedu, House Dibakwane, House Nonyane, House Wawa, and so it goes, right? But then there is then, when it comes to animal spirits, there is then an animal spirit, which is then the sovereign spirit, which represents the divine for the whole lineage, which for us as Mapulana, the animal spirit of the Mapulana people is a lion. So outside of all of those banners that represent our own personal connection and our relationship with that particular totem, the spirit animal to us represents then the connection to the divine source.
So you've got the spirit animal, which is like a big umbrella, so to say, which is the lion for you, hence the lion shirt. And you have a banner, which is representative of your family and your particular lineage within the larger lineage.
Togoza,
and
yes.
That for you is a worm. Okay, got it. Thank you. So talk to me about, how do ancestral guides come? I know they come in the shape of animals. which of these? Is it the totem? Is it the animal spirit guide? And do they come in other forms as well?
This is beautiful. I love this question. Everything is alive and everything has a conscious and everything carries a divine spark within it.
Which we believe as well, by the way, in India.
Yes,
Yeah.
indigenous, it's a universal
Belief,
indigenous
yes.
world. What that worldview then gives to us in then seeing that everything is alive, what it means for me, my ancestral guide, Gogo Khanyakude, is my great great grandmother as a living blood ancestor who then has reincarnated within me as my ancestral guide. Yet within Gogo Khanyakude, as my great grandmother, she also was a person who had her own relationship and her own connection. So she comes from the Mabuza lineage. So Gogo Khanyakude can then show up to me sometimes as the land. I can dream of Gogo Khanyakude as her as in KZN, and that reminds me of a certain timeline. I can dream of Gogo Khanyakude as being in Mozambique, and that speaks to a certain timeline, right? So in the same breath, she can appear even as herself, as my great grandmother, my ancestor. As I've grown in my relationship with Gogo Khanyakude, I've gotten to also see a deep connection that she has with mountains. So at times, the light catching a certain part of the mountain, there's a certain portal that opens, and I'm seeing the mountain, but also remembering so much and downloading so much. Another then representation is one of birds. And even now, as I'm speaking about her, the birds distinctively are chirping around. So all of this answer is that how I language it to those that I teach is that we all have ancestral communication channels or receptors that we have within our bodies, our ways of receiving and our ways of meaning making.
So does your grandmother ever come to you as an animal guide? Like you said, does she come as birds? And what is your connection? You have animal spirit guides and you have a totem, right? For your family. Have they ever personally helped you? Can you explain that aspect to me?
Coming from a totemic culture, it's not only exclusive to my Pulana side. So on my maternal side, we are Masego. Our animal totem is then an elephant, Kubonye Wendlovu. I've mentioned my grandmother's lineage, which is a monkey. So there are various totems as I carry my family tree going back 7 generations on my maternal and about 4 generations going on my paternal, and that's on both maternal, and maternal, paternal on both sides. So I carry about over 30 various lineages or last names connect to me, and each of them have various totems. So from these totems, I am constantly seeing this manifestation. One of the biggest ones for me, coming back to the worm. We have a Marula tree back home at Pumalanga, where my homestead and where my Ndumba, my Msamo, my sanctuary is, my shrine is. That Marula tree had never bore fruit, and everybody was convinced and kept on saying, no, this is a male tree. And I was so sad because I'm like, oh, there's no marula fruit. 2 months later, for the first time in I think about 9 years, the marula tree then bore fruit for the first time. These are some of the simple ways within which in waking state that I've seen just that relationship there.
Give me another example of when either your animal guide or your ancestral guides have helped you. This is fascinating.
We're hosting a retreat, which was an ancestral lineage healing retreat and yoga healing retreat. A beautiful international collaboration where we hosted 18 bodies from all over the world. 2 days before we were starting the retreat, we as the facilitators decided to go and just have a team rally outside in nature at the Kruger Park. When we got to the Kruger Park, the gate was already closed, and luckily my friend works there, so she was able to organize for a late permit even though we had to pay. We drive into the Kruger Park gates. Within the first 200 meters, we run into a leopard. I'd never seen a leopard in my life. It was my first time seeing a leopard in the flesh. We drive about 200 meters further, and then three lionesses emerge in that same path.
Beautiful.
Drive another 300 meters further, 500 meters further, and then another leopard emerges. This leopard walked towards our car, came towards the window, turned around, and then started leading the path going. So the first one we ran into was walking towards the gate. The other one was walking towards the inside of the camp. And in between them, we had come across these three lionesses. To me, that was the biggest embodiment of both an animal spirit and also the animal totem coming in to speak so much truth. The three lionesses for me represented also the coming together of my offering of yoga, of mindfulness, and of bungoma. And yeah, oh
wow. Because a lot of the ancestral guides, like you said, don't have bodies anymore. So they use our bodies, they use our senses. Is that why they use the animal spirits also? Because if we need, say, strength, then our animal spirit that will come to guide us might be a lion, because then they will use that body. Is it because they don't have bodies that we get associated with animal spirit? Is that the connection?
That is definitely a possibility which will be there. I've always held that the relationship with totems and animals that our guides have is that our ancestors of antiquity, if you imagine now at the beginning of the world, all over our vast lands, our ancestors learned how to commune with the land, with the nature, and just the world by observing nature, and particularly animals and how animals related in nature. So animals are our totems today because they represent our first teachers. Some animals taught us how to make shelter. Some animals taught us which foods are safe to eat. Through observing animals when they were not feeling well and where they go, they taught us plant medicine. Animals knowing instinctively when danger is coming taught us also to have that prescience within ourselves where we can be able to come to safety. Also, around the change of seasons, the migration of the birds, the hibernation of some animals, the movement of the elephants, animals also taught us to understand that we need to be able to shift in different ways to understand the changing of seasons and what that means to us. In African cosmology, we believe that animals are the closest form to the divine source, far closer than we are as humans.
Yeah, that because they're purer. I guess. So give me an example of when an animal spirit guide has helped heal someone or remove an obstacle that you have seen, that you viewed.
There's a goat. When I was initiating that, they only had one goat at the time at the homestead, a black goat which was nameless at the time. I was the first initiate, and then three other initiates would join me about 3 months later. The third initiate who came to join me as our sibling, her spiritual name is Msila. She was very ill. Her dark night was physical illness. She was bedridden, and the doctors were like, the only thing we know we can do for you is to amputate your feet, but we don't know what's wrong with you. When she finally started being able to gather up mobility in her own body, there was this broom that she would use to walk. And there was this goat then that was in that yard, which nobody really had paid any attention to, took such an affinity to her and would walk everywhere and almost like encourage, at times coax, at other times mischievously, like as she was getting better, like bump her to see how her stability was. They developed such a beautiful relationship that we ended up naming the goat Msila as well,
Oh,
because it was almost like
wow.
everywhere she went, the goat was. And we were like, you guys are twins. This goat is Msila. You are Msila squared. So the goat
Right.
is actually the most divine being within the Goma cosmology.
I know you're doing a lot of work. We talked about it when I was there with the youth, because you're trying to help them to get back to African spirituality, to understand their roots, to understand ancient practices and ancient wisdom. How would you suggest, what steps would you tell them to take?
So the guidance I always give to people wherever they are is a simple three-worder: people, spirit, space. How are you connecting with the people around you? Your family is your first medicine. Anything that has to do with the ancestral always begins at home. Just really coming into acknowledging, introspecting, almost unpacking to yourself as to what is the nature of relationship I have with my family and we have with each other. Then go to your parents' lineage. What relationship did they have with their parents, with with where they come from, right? From that, you start to broaden and see as to what malaces, what conditions, what patterns, what is there to be with as just an is in your
Mhm.
lineage. So when we speak around space, how do you, in reclaiming your ancestral or indigenous ways, how is that shifting the way that you relate with your space? If you're
Mhm.
living in an apartment, how can the way you relate with your apartment start to actually affirm the fact that I am now not just seeing this as a place where I come to rest, but I'm seeing that this is a portal when I need it to be a portal. This is a stronghold. This is a conduit. This is a channel. It is so many things. And how do you take care of that space?
So, say I, as someone who wants to reconnect to my practice, I'm
Mhm.
seeing a particular animal a lot, or I feel a connection with the mountain. What is my next stage? Where do I take it from there? I'm asking you to give
Yes,
me an example of what I need to do.
I love the one of the mountain. I'm feeling called to a particular mountain to take care of the whole space. We'll often go into our head and be like, what am I supposed to do? What will I do when I get there? We're not taking care of space. So, first, take care of the space that is receiving this call and connect with your head, heart, and body. And then feel into it as to, am I connecting with the energy of the mountain because this energy is asking for me to just acknowledge it? Whether is it inviting for me to actually maybe just take a walk up to the mountain, a simple walk. I always guide people, take it simple. It's not a performance, we're not striving. Observe, interact, a simple walk, and then give yourself space to feel. That's the guidance I would give with the mountain. With an animal totem, there are those that I've worked with that have been shown lion. Let's carry on with the lions. The lot
Right.
that lions have come up for, and the lions would be there. And often, what I would say to an individual is that, well, lions aren't everywhere, but lions are available in our technology for them to be brought into your space. So perhaps explore what, because lions are mostly active at night. That's when they actually active. What would it be like if you're constantly seeing these lions and they're interacting with you? If maybe you found a sound clip of lions that you could play overnight while you're
Mhm.
sleeping and invite that natural energy of how a lion shows up in nature into your space. When we work with totems, we're not escaping to an esoteric side, to an esoteric space. We're really coming back to an earth based wisdom. We're
Mhm.
learning like our ancestors learned as to how does this particular animal take care of its people? How does it take care of its space? And then how does that then honor spirit, the spirit of the animal?
Which is lovely, which is what you said. People, spirit, space. Always think of those three and how are they connected when it comes to your totems and ancestral guides. There is one final question that I have for you, and that is, there is a lot of conflicting interpretations, especially when it comes to animals. You know, in the Western world, in the African context, in the different contexts. So just to give you an example, we talked a lot about the lion, right? Now, the lion is meant to embody strength. In the African context, it's royalty and leadership, while in the Western context, sometimes it means aggression and territorial dominance. How do you balance these? Why is there such a difference when it's all nature? How do you balance these differences? And how would you explain it to people listening to us, these cross-cultural differences?
It's nuanced. It's not a straightforward answer. In one layer, when we speak around the example of lions, for some representing power and aggression and dominance, where for others it's leadership and it's royalty. The qualitative difference between those would be the lens. In that Western framework, we're lensing it through a patriarchal, cis heteronormative, capitalist, politicized way, which is very much about cultural dominance and hegemony. So, all of this to say that the cross cultural differences often reveal our relationship we have with ourselves as a people, our worldview. It speaks a lot to also how it is that we have our relationship we have with the space. You mentioned something around the superstitious nature that is there in a lot of African cosmology, and that hasn't always been there since antiquity. It is a colonial interruption. So at the core of my response is saying that I believe that we all, if we go from my learnings, we may have qualitative distinctions, but there isn't a culture that views any natural living being as being good or bad. We view them as there to be guides, as there to be teachers, as there to be signs at times, as there to be omens and symbols. And that is what they are, a representation and at times an embodiment.
Thank you. That was a fantastic answer, actually. That over the years, even the purity of a lot of our ancestral teachings has been affected by history, so to say, and by the countries that came and ruled and their knowledge. So thank you for reminding us of that. And there are certain things that I'm going away from this podcast. One is what you said about totems, about it relating to myself, my ancestors, and the divine. That was beautiful because we're all one, actually, and we're all connected. That was beautiful. The other thing that you said about people, spirit, and space in the context of African cosmology or any indigenous cosmology, I guess. So thank you for that. Thank you for being here today and for giving us your time.
Anshu, thank you so much for having me.
To our listeners, I hope you understood a little bit about the energy that the animals embody and the role that they play in our lives, in our physical lives and in our spiritual lives, and in our path to self-realization. I leave you with a reflection from the teachings of African spirituality. The animals of the earth, sky, and sea speak to us. Their spirits are our companions on the journey, showing us the way. Thank you for tuning in to Ancient Wisdom for Modern Living, and hope to see you next time. If this episode was interesting to you in any way, if it helped you understand about your ancestral guides and your animal spirits, do share it with family and friends. Thank you.